Malaysia and Brazil enhancing bilateral relations. Trump deploys huge US carrier to Latin America. Good afternoon and salam Madani. This is World Today. I'm Sahih. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim and Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva are determined to enhance the bilateral relationship between the two countries. Datuk Seri Anwar said their discussions covered a number of issues including trade, education, culture and research.
And I mentioned that decades ago when I was at UNESCO, one of the countries that excited me was Brazil, because you have placed so much importance in research and scientific research that can be a showcase for most of the newly emerging independent countries.
Datuk Seri Anwar added that they would also explore the semiconductor sector with both countries capable of sharing each other's expertise. He also said he discussed with Lula the possibility of increasing imports of poultry products from Brazil. During his visit to Malaysia, Lula is scheduled to attend the 47th ASEAN Summit and related summits as a guest of the chair. Over the next 3 days, ASEAN leaders are set to congregate at the Kuala Lumpur Convention Centre for the 47th ASEAN Summit and related summits, where discussions will focus on issues related to ASEAN community building and its external relations. The Foreign Ministry said the leaders will also deliberate on ways to deepen regional integration, stimulate economic growth and enhance ASEAN connectivity. On external relations, the heads of the 10th member bloc will discuss efforts to reinforce ASEAN unity and centrality and strengthen ASEAN's commitment to a rules-based multilateral order in the evolving global geostrategic landscape. The summits consist of the ASEAN Summit, the ASEAN Plus1 summits between ASEAN and 7 dialogue partners, the ASEAN Plus3 Summit, East Asia Summit, ASEAN United Nations Summit and ASEAN New Zealand Commemorative Summit. The opening ceremony is scheduled for tomorrow. ASEAN continues to stand firm and deliver results despite global uncertainties and escalating rivalries among major powers. Foreign Minister Datuk Seri Mohamad Hassan said the regional bloc's unity and resilience have allowed it to withstand external pressures and preserve stability. In the eyes of the international community, he said ASEAN has stood as a beacon of neutrality and a safe harbour amid geopolitical turbulence.
Thank you, people of Malaysia. Welcome to Kuala Lumpur. Preserving ASEAN's unity and purpose while laying a path for the future. And it is also the duty of the chair to do so, while never once abandoning the core values that unite us: trust, dialogue, and consensus. These values form the glue that have empowered us to defy the expectation of the world, to be a success story of a region that is highly diverse in terms of culture, languages, religions, and modes of governance, and yet is thriving so well.
Speaking at the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting, he emphasized that inclusivity and sustainability must continue to define ASEAN's vision, ensuring that no member state is left behind as the region moves forward.
Whatever uncertainties lie ahead, we will face them.
Thailand's former Queen Sirikit, the mother of current King Vajiralongkorn and wife of the nation's longest reigning monarch, died at the age of 93. Throughout her 66-year marriage to King Bhumibol Adulyadej, Sirikit carved a dual reputation as a fashionista and the nation's caring matriarch. Some Western media featured her on magazine covers and compared her to former US First Lady Jackie Kennedy. The Palisades circuit had suffered several illnesses while hospitalized since 2019, including a blood infection this month. King Vajiralongkorn has assigned members of the royal family to begin a year-long mourning period. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres received a state welcoming ceremony in Hanoi hosted by Vietnamese President Luong Quoc. After the ceremony, Guterres and Quoc held a bilateral meeting aimed at advancing a pact against cybercrime, which is expected to be signed today. During the two-day visit to Vietnam, Guterres is also scheduled to meet with Vietnamese top leader To Lam, Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh and Chairman of the National Assembly Tran Tan Man. Vietnam is experiencing an escalation of cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure and major corporations. The UN Office on Drugs and Crime, which led the treaty talks, said the agreement includes provisions to protect human rights and allows states to reject cooperation requests that conflict with international law. Activists and tech firms have voiced concern that treaty could criminalize ethical hackers who test systems for vulnerabilities, especially when their findings expose sensitive government flows. The UN agency, however, said the convention encourages states to enable legitimate research activities. Chinese Premier Li Qiang has stressed adopting innovative approaches and seeking tangible results in high-quality formulation of the 15th Five-Year Plan 2026 to 2030 for China's economic and social development. Li made the remarks while chairing a meeting of the State Council leading group on the formulation of the draft plan. The 20th CPC Central Committee convened its fourth plenary session in Beijing from Monday to Thursday. Participants at the session deliberated over and adopted the recommendations of the CPC Central Committee for formulating the 15th Five-Year Plan. At the meeting, Li stressed that the recommendations are the guiding document for the country's economic and social development during the five-year plan period. When making the new draft plan, Li said it is essential to take promoting high-quality development as the overarching task to effectively pursue higher quality economic growth and appropriately increase economic output. He stressed the need to focus on people's livelihood, concentrate on addressing concerns across all sectors when planning policies and measures. Japan's new Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi has pledged to accelerate a defense spending target by 2 years as her government pursues proactive fiscal expansion on strategic priorities. In her first policy speech, Takaichi told Parliament that Japan aims to reach a defense spending goal of 2% of gross domestic product GDP in the current fiscal year through March, ahead of the original target of fiscal 2027.
この内閣では経済あっての財政の考え方を基本とします。強い経済を構築するため、責任ある積極財政の考え方のもと、戦略的に財政出動を行います。
The defense target underscores Takaichi's commitment to spending, which she terms proactive, in a bid to stimulate economic growth. This is based on her argument that a strong economy is a prerequisite for sound fiscal policy. An advocate of expansionary fiscal and monetary policy, Takaichi also vowed to maintain market confidence and achieve sustainable public finances by reducing government debt as a share of GDP. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said that trade talks with Washington are going well. She, however, declined to comment about U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement that the U.S. is ending trade talks with Canada over an anti-tariff advertisement issued by Ontario's provincial government. When asked if Mexico could continue on its own with Canada, Sheinbaum urged patience, saying that she prefers to wait and see how the relationship with Canada progresses. Trump terminated the talks on Thursday over the video which used Republican icon, former President Ronald Reagan, saying tariff caused trade wars and economic disaster. The U.S. President then accused Canada of trying to influence the Supreme Court as it prepares to consider a challenge to his global tariff agenda. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney had removed most of Canada's retaliatory tariff on US imports imposed by his predecessor, and the two sides had been in talks for weeks on a deal for the steel and aluminium sectors. Still ahead, US sanctions Colombian President Petro. President Donald Trump's administration escalated a U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean by announcing the deployment of the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier group to Latin America. It is a show of force far beyond any past counter-narcotic efforts and Washington's most assertive move in the region so far. The deployment adds to the 8 warships, a nuclear submarine and F-35 aircraft already in the region. It marks a significant escalation amid heightened tensions with Venezuela, whose government has long been accused by the US of harboring drug traffickers. Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell said the deployment of the USS Gerald R. Ford and accompanying ships will enhance existing capabilities to disrupt narcotics trafficking. He added it will also degrade and dismantle transnational criminal organizations. He did not specify when the carrier would be moving to the region, but as of a few days ago, the carrier was traveling via the Strait of Gibraltar and in Europe. The Ford is the United States' newest aircraft carrier and the world's largest, with more than 5,000 sailors aboard. The US military has carried out 10 strikes against alleged drug vessels, mostly in the Caribbean, since early September, killing about 40 people. The US has imposed sanctions on Colombian President Gustavo Petro, accusing him of refusing to stop the flow of cocaine to the US. The move comes as Washington increases pressure on the Latin American leader who has clashed with President Donald Trump. The action adds Petro to a list of world leaders under US sanctions alongside Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, Russian President Vladimir Putin and others. Petro's wife and son and Armando Benedetti, Colombia's interior minister, were also hit with sanctions under the authority that allows Washington to target those it accuses of being involved in the global illicit drug trade. The US alleged that since Petro came to power, cocaine production in Colombia has exploded to the highest rate in decades, flooding the US and poisoning Americans. On the other hand, Petro, in a post on social media, said he had sought to fight drug trafficking for decades. Last weekend, Trump threatened to raise tariffs on Colombia and said on Wednesday that all funding to the country had been halted. President Volodymyr Zelensky urged Kiev's allies in the coalition of the willing to enhance Ukraine's long-range weapons capabilities to put pressure on Russia to negotiate over the war. Ukraine uses its own weapons to strike energy and military facilities deep inside Russia and has been seeking long-range Tomahawk missiles from the US to increase pressure on Moscow.
We are carrying out our own campaign of pressure with drones and missiles, specifically targeting the Russian oil sector. So the long-range capability directly strengthens diplomacy, the more losses Putin suffers on his own territory. The fewer assaults he can carry carry out on the front line, and the faster he will agree to meaningful diplomacy. That is why we are working to secure Tomahawk cruise missiles, additional Storm Shadow missiles, other capabilities.
Earlier, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer welcomed Zelensky to 10 Downing Street ahead of the coalition of the Willing meeting. Britain urged fellow allies of Ukraine to reach a deal to use frozen Russian assets to strengthen its hand for any future peace talks as Zelensky arrived in London for talks with those allies.
I do think that this week we can really bear down on Russian oil and gas. Huge steps forward this week already. I think there's further we can do on capability, particularly long-term, long-range capability, and of course the vital work the coalition are willing.
Zelensky told Starmer that Vladimir Putin does not show he is willing to end the war and is instead ramping up attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure ahead of winter. The ringleader of an arson attack on Ukraine-linked businesses in London last year was jailed for 17 years for what prosecutors describe as a sustained campaign of terrorism and sabotage on UK soil. Dylan Earle admitted aggravated arson over last year's blaze, which targeted companies delivering satellite equipment from Elon Musk's Starlink to Ukraine. He also became the first person convicted under the National Security Act for his role in a plot targeting a wine shop and restaurant in London's upmarket Mayfair district, with plans to kidnap the owner, a critic of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Earle appeared in the dock at London's Old Bailey Court alongside Jake Reeves, who had also pleaded guilty to aggravated arson and a National Security Act charge of obtaining a material benefit from a foreign intelligence agency. Judge Bobby Kema Grubb sentenced Earle to 17 years in prison for arson and National Security Act charges along with separate drugs charge. Meanwhile, Reeves was sentenced to 12 years imprisonment.
Subject secure! Subject secure.
Next up in sports, Leonardo on target as Al Hilal beat Al Ittihad. The challenge for the mixed doubles camp at the French Open ended after both national pairs Cheng Tan-ji and Toh Yi-wei, as well as Goh Soon-hwat and Siobhan Lai Jamie, were defeated in the quarterfinals. In the quarterfinal match held at the Glass Arena, Sissin-Sovin, Soon-hwat Siobhan had to concede defeat to the second seed from China, Feng Yang-zi and Huang Dongping, 18-21, 16-21. This marks the fourth consecutive quarterfinal loss for the married couple, having experienced the same fate at the Denmark Open, Arctic Open and Korea Open previously. Earlier, the world champions Tang Ji Yi-wei were also shown the exit when they were surprisingly defeated by Hong Kong pair Tang Chung-man and Si Yin-suet. The pair suffered an unexpected loss, having to surrender 9-21, 18-21 in a duration of 37 minutes. Al Hilal outplayed Al Ittihad on the road with Marcos Leonardo on target to help them to a 2-0 win in Jeddah. The visiting side got on the board late in the first half when Ruben Neves put up a cross from the corner that was headed in by Al Ittihad midfielder Mahamadou Doumbia for an own goal. Marcos Leonardo doubled their lead in the 57th minute when he cleaned up on the rebound of a shot by Neves from outside the box that goalkeeper Hamid Al-Shankiti blocked but failed to wrap up. Al Ittihad's Karim Benzema had a couple of chances in the second half, but the home team failed to get on the board. Al Hilal sit in third place in the standings on 14 points from 6 games, one of Saudi Pro League leaders Al Nassr, who have a game in hand. Al Ittihad are in 7th place on 10 points. Arsenal's defence has conceded 3 Premier League goals so far this season, and manager Mikel Arteta hopes that they can finally deliver the silverware that has eluded the North London clubs for so long. Their defensive solidity even extends to Europe, where the formidable backline remain unbreached after 3 Champions League games.
I just go back to the history of football in general and the teams that have the best defensive record most of the times, except for the last 3 seasons in the Premier League, which we've been. Normally you win the league. So just go against those stats, but the stronger we are in that foundation, the bigger the probability to win games are.
They will be put to the test again when the Premier League leaders host Crystal Palace tomorrow. With David Raya in goal and the commanding centre-back partnership of William Saliba and Gabriel Magalhaes, clean sheets have become Arsenal's trademark in this campaign. While Arsenal's defensive wall has frustrated opponents, it is their prowess from set pieces that has been rewriting the record books at the other end of the pitch. Ruben Amorim is hunting his first hat-trick of Premier League wins as Manchester United manager. However, he warned against getting carried away by their stunning victory over Liverpool as he prepares for a tough test against Brighton.
Yeah, we use the good spirit of winning games. We know that was a good weekend for us, but our focus is in the next game. That is in the past, and we need to understand that football changed a lot, especially in this kind of club. So we are not thinking in the last game. We are thinking on this game is going to be really hard to win.
The Portuguese coach achieved his first back-to-back win since taking over in November, with last weekend's 2-1 triumph at Anfield, lifting United to 9th in the league and providing a rare dose of optimism at Old Trafford. Amorim faces a Brighton side 1 point behind United in 10th and was full of praise for counterpart Fabian Hüsler, describing himself as a huge fan of the German manager. World number 2, Yannick Sinner is into the semi-finals of the Vienna Open after a straight set 6-4, 6-4 win over Alexander Bublik. The Italian had been beaten by Bublik in June this year, but he was in total control yesterday, never losing more than 1 point in all his service games. Sinner lost to Bublik in Halle in June, but has since put the 28-year-old to the sword. The 24-year-old suffocated the world number 16, who is a relentless striking to show overall performance level. Sinner now leads Bublik 6-2 in the pair's ATP head-to-head series following his quarter-final win. It is a good omen thus far for Sinner, who lifted the trophy in his previous appearance in Vienna back in 2023 and is 15-4 in this event. He has also won his part 19 indoor matches. Awaiting Sinner next in the semi-finals is Alex de Minaur, who beat Italian Matteo Berrettini also in straight sets 6-1, 7-6. Meanwhile, in the women's tennis, the Pan Pacific Open, Belinda Bencic earned her spot in the semi-finals with a hard-fought win over Karolina Muchova. The Swiss number 5 seed dropped the first set before rallying to secure a 3-6, 7-5, 7-5 win over the 8-seeded Czech. The 3-hour, 8-minute encounter was the 48th tour-level match of this year that has passed the 3-hour mark. Bencic had been slow to find her range in the first set, tallying 14 unforced errors to just 5 winners as she was repeatedly foiled by Muchova's touch in defense. Muchova also looked strong in the second set, but began to fall off as the Swiss held her ground before staging a spectacular comeback to seal 2 sets in a row. With the win, Bencic also avenged her 3-set defeat against Muchova in Montreal last August. Bencic will face Sofia Kenin in the semis after the American beat Russia's Ekaterina Alexandrova 6-love, 2-6, 7-6. Previously, Kenin had beaten Bencic in both of her previous head-to-head matches on grass in Mallorca in 2019 and on clay in Charleston last April. Coming up in our Offbeat segment, Mexico showcases monumental skeleton sculptures. Alexco in Mexico showcased its cultural tradition with Val de Catrinas, an event marking the Day of the Dead season featuring monumental skeleton sculptures over 3 meters tall. Created using traditional cartoneria techniques, a handcraft in Mexico, creating paper march sculptures by skilled local artists, the exhibit attracts both domestic and international visitors who tour Alexco to photograph the towering Catrinas.
Es un trabajo artesanal extraordinario. Por lo tanto, reitero, sigamos con estas tradiciones. Y es muy representativo, es parte de nuestra cultura, es parte de nuestra educación. Entonces sigamos con ellas.
In its fifth edition, the festival pays homage to emblematic occupations such as shoe shiners, potters, tortilla makers, and organ grinders, reflecting Mexico's everyday life. Several of the sculptures are displayed amidst the region's iconic marigold fields. The giant skeletons will be on display until early November. In a workshop in Najaf, Iraqi mechanic and scrap artist Hussein Dawood assembled a model made entirely from upcycled vehicle scrap parts, blending creativity with environmental conscientiousness. What began as a hobby has evolved into a unique form of scrap art to repurpose metal waste, used tires and discarded vehicle parts. Dawood sources materials from workshops across Najaf, including motorcycle repair shops, where discarded parts such as engines and tools are repurposed for his creation.
اختيار القطع يصير مثل هسه الدشالي، لأن أشياء مميزة تصير دائما بالوجه على مود يبرز المجسم. وأكو أشياء مثلا تصير يعني تصير هي بالممارسة، من تصير عندك خبرة، يعني تقريبا صار لها 7 سنوات فصارت عندك خبرة الأشياء أو القطع وين أخليهن.
Dawood dreams of taking his scrap art worldwide and displaying it in public spaces like parks, gardens and streets. He hopes to create art pieces that raise awareness about the environment. His scrap art has recently reached Al-Qadisiyah province in Iraq, also known as Diwaniyah, where his artwork, a fist holding a wrench, now stands outside an all-products distribution company, symbolizing its engineers. A huge inflatable Kermit the Frog has become the star of the Art Basel Paris Contemporary Art Fair in the French capital, unnerved by a daring heist at the Louvre. Kermit the Frog even is a 20-meter blow-up figure by Venezuelan-US artist Alex Decourt, with its head deflated at the artist's request. The beloved Muppet Show puppet has already been on display for several days in the Place Vendôme, where the world's top jewelers showcase their most valuable and extravagant pieces. Kermit succeeds last year's giant mushroom by German artist Karsten Heuler and the wave by Switzerland's Urs Fischer in 2023. Art Basel Paris said its head is deflated as a way of paying tribute to US public broadcaster PBS, which aired The Muppet Show in the 1970s. This is the 4th fair in Paris organized by Switzerland Art Basel, which organizes a series of contemporary art fairs around the world. More than 200 galleries from around 40 countries are taking part in the main event from Friday to Sunday under the huge glass dome roof of the Grand Palais in Paris. And that wraps up World Today. In our top story, Malaysia and Brazil enhancing bilateral relations. Tune in to Malaysia Tonight, coming up at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. I'm Sahih Samsudin, Malaysia Madani, Rakyat, Disantuni. Thank you for watching.